welcome to the September episode of Amiga Ireland. I'm Irla.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Luke.
And in today's episode, make your own Lightwave render farm with Amigabari and Raspberry Pi.
We have a boxed Amiga game release in the works from our very own John Gervin.
And the Syndicate board game is in the making.
We've been away for quite a while. We've had a nice break, a nice summer for ourselves. Just a quick hello to John from Nivrig Games and Daniel Musner, who were talking on Gamescom there just a little over the last week ago. It's good to see you both, and thanks for the shout out. Looking forward to meeting with you again at some stage. Guys, it's been a while. How have you been?
I was doing some work for one of the guys here on his Amiga 1200, and one thing led to another, and now I've got another hardware project in the works. So I'm working on an RGB LED controller and fan controller and temperature controller for the clock port. So
cool.
This is this kind of it's one of these projects that I was like, can you just connect up some LEDs for me? And I'm like, yeah. Or I could do this. I spend a month at it. So that's a little thing I'm working on that's grown arms and legs, and that's keeping me busy now.
Nice,
very nice.
Looking forward to seeing that. We've had an amazing summer, and I'm kind of looking out now and it's kind of grey out and kind of a bit sad to say goodbye to it. We had a very outdoor summer, meeting neighbours. About half of our apartment block moved out and just left over the summer because they had no work because of the virus. So those of us that were left met in the back garden and had social distanced meetings kind of most nights, and playing music. Turns out a lot of us are musicians and a few singers and choirs and stuff like that. So turns out as well, like, we've been living beside each other for one guy 7 years, I think. We're together. I thought they just moved in. I was asking them how they're settling in, and yeah, so there you go. As soon as you get a bit of time off work, you start to see life around you. Yeah, and we've been driving a lot through the month of August. We've been to Dingle and Belfast, Ballynahowan, Connemara, Westmeath. So it was lovely to get around. And now we're back, and work is insane because of all the changes around the COVID. Yeah, how about you, Luke?
A rather calm month, trying to slow down, trying to relax, at the same time trying to, focus on new projects and recharge at the same time. So that's it.
A little birdie told me that's that you're selling Amiga dust covers on your website and that you can't get them anywhere else. Is that right?
That is right. That's one of the projects, yeah.
Well, that is cool. I did not know that. If I'd known that, I would have made that more widely known at the event last year, because we some lucky winners got some at the raffle at the end of the...
I think, as far as I remember, Pixel Vixen's got one. Yeah, she for her 600, yeah.
Yeah, and I think Muad'Dib, who is doing the Lightwave 3D workshops, I think he got another one, actually.
Yeah. There
you go. Okay. And actually, speaking of which, the Lightwave 3D workshops have just started up again. That's somebody else who's back from their holidays. So thanks, Muad'Dib. I'm looking forward to catching up on those. Okay, let's move on to the news. iBrowse 2.5.3 is released with increased performance of HTTPS connections thanks to session caching and persistent HTTPS connections. You can get more info at the iBrowse dev website.
AMI Express BBS is getting a rewrite. So this is one of the big BBS bulletin board system softwares that people were using back in the day. So it's getting a bit of an overhaul and support for faster serial ports and for, better support for accounts and some bit of modernization here and there, and that because there's a bit of renewed interest in the whole BBS scene at the moment.
And Amigabari now lets you send commands to Linux from Amiga Shell. It's a very useful thing, especially when you're using Linux. It's got also shared clipboard that got implemented.
Nice touch. Somebody's been busy.
Very nice.
AmiWest 2020 is back on for this October, and guests will include Doug from Denmark, as well as Trevor Dickinson if the travel restrictions are lifted in time. And thanks to George Sokianos for tipping me off to that one.
The assembler source code for Cygnos's Agony has been released. So that, anyone who is familiar with it will know this is one of these exceptionally good looking games, and it's one of these games that takes advantage of every little aspect of the OCS ECS chipset, and it's a great, technically it's amazing. It's a very nice, a nicely executed, really nicely executed shooter, and it's one of the classics. Yeah, it's sort of almost like a case study in how to get the most out of your hardware. Yeah, so the source code is up there now. It's all some nice heavy assembler to have a good rummage through.
Miss Mad Lemon has a blog now covering everything from photography, electronics, SID-box development, and of course Amiga. Miss Mad Lemon, obviously, most people would know she has a YouTube channel that covers a nice variety of things. So now it's nice to be able to read it in blog format, and I was actually able to access this on iBrowse on my Amiga 1200, which is extra nice touch. So
I can't imagine that's a coincidence.
Very nice.
True.
Very nice. Right, and Syndicate board game is in the making. Actually, there's a Kickstarter project. Syndicate, I'm sure a lot of you remember this game, is set in the cyberpunk dark future. The game was a 3D strategy shooter with the emphasis on strategy, actually, and development. Very, very good atmosphere of a Blade Runner. I'm really looking forward to a board game. I'm curious how they are going to solve all that.
That's definitely one to look for. All right.
Yeah, I think imagination is the key.
But yeah, Syndicate is one of my favorites, all-time favorite games. It's
very,
brilliant.
very good. Cyberpunk, definitely.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting one now.
Dystopian future.
Yeah.
Intriguing.
Yeah.
Insidious is coming soon. A legendary sound chip will be reborn. This is a virtual version of the legendary SID sound chip with true hardware modeled oscillators, filters, envelopes and sequencing. And this will be available as software for you to purchase and create music with.
So basically, it lets you run a SID as part of a modern synth setup. So it's as far as it looks like Windows software, to be honest.
So it's going to be everywhere, probably.
But it's a virtual SID synth.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that'll be, hopefully we'll get some nice new tunes out from the artists that take that up. Also, CS Labs, the creator of Warp 1260, have shared a fascinating story of their own origins with Amiga and the origins of their projects like the Warp 1260 board. And we were very privileged to have them talk to us, and we've uploaded an hour-long interview on our YouTube channel. So if you look for the Amiga Ireland podcast on YouTube, it's the top one there, and it's been the busiest thing we've ever uploaded onto YouTube, I think, at least in quite a while. A very good interview, really nice guys, fun guys with really interesting insights into how things are going for them. So well worth a listen.
The Rage, if anyone knows it, it's a retro games and record shop in Dublin. That has closed its doors on Fade Street, unfortunately, which was a pretty epic location for a shop like that. Now it was right, prime location, and sadly it's closed its doors. But it has opened on 8 Crow Street, or reopened on 8 Crow Street in a possibly slightly more suitable thing. But that's from memory, that's just off or just close to Temple Bar now. So. So it's good to see they're still operating, and I know for a while they were operating basically out of a storage unit and online only stuff. So, but it's nice to see they've actually got a sort of a street presence as well now. But they're great for probably not so much Amiga stuff, but they have the odd Amiga thing, but it's mainly the console stuff. But it's a great shop to have a wander in, and give them a shout if you're up that way.
Another one. Linux and classic Amiga can coexist, but the thing is, Amiga FFS now supported by Linux kernel 5.9 release candidate 4. And what does it mean actually for us, Rob? Can you for example tell me what does it mean for us?
Well, it basically means that a Linux machine with this kernel can read an Amiga formatted hard drive. You can take your hard drive or your compact flash card out of your Amiga and mount it directly on a Linux machine. So
brilliant! That's brilliant.
Pretty cool. Yeah. And I know years and years ago there was support and it was dropped, probably for
I remember
sensible reasons. But there's a lot of renewed interest now, and so that's great.
That's really good. And the credit goes to Mark from Binary Times podcast. Thanks for that, Mark.
Mark is a good guy. So Mark and Wayne run the Binary Times podcast. It's a Linux podcast, but it's also a little bit about life as well, and more general kind of software development, management, deployment, and different. They kind of go into other interesting topics as well. So if you haven't heard the Binary Times podcast, definitely give it a listen. Really interesting guys. And recurring guest they actually have on, it seems, from time to time anyway, is Mike Saunders. He was with Linux Format for years, then Linux Voice, and then he created Mike OS Yeah, he's a prolific guy, and he works with the Document Foundation now, I think, or the LibreOffice crew. He's done some work with them, so interesting guy.
Cool.
And an Amiga head, yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. There's a 5-part guide on Amigabari powered Lightwave render farm, and it's now completed thanks to Midwan's hard work. And the Midwan demoed this at Amiga Ireland 2020, and there was a lot of interest in it. People were talking about it a lot. It looks cool, and it produces great results. So now you can build your own following this tutorial.
AmiKit for Vampire has been sort of announced, and it was teased for an August release. Now I'm not sure if it has actually reached that. If it has actually reached the release level, but there's been a bit of promotion of it going on, and this is looking pretty serious because obviously the Vampire is a significant bit of kit, but AmiKit, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically sort of a deluxe distro of Amiga OS. So it's kind of all the extra stuff that that'll enrich the experience. All the backgrounds, all the fancy gadgets and stuff like that make it sort of a high-end Amiga experience, if you like, and all sort of set up and ready to go. So it's usually AmiKit has been for like super high end Amigas or for emulators. But it's there's a Vampire specific distribution now, or there, I don't know if it's actually out now, but it was rumored to be released around August, and but yeah, check that out. If it's not out now, it will be soon.
And you can now convert ham videos more easily on Linux thanks to AGA conv. So this is good news for anyone who doesn't run Windows, basically, and has kind of enjoyed watching people converting their favorite YouTube clips or DVDs to ham video to play on their own Amigas. So you can do ham 6 or ham 8, and it did work really well on Windows. But now you can do it on Linux, which is nice because you can script it. And it worked fine for me on Ubuntu 20.04. The only issue I had was that it requires FFmpeg. So that's one of the dependencies. Now, FFmpeg comes with Linux. I think it's installed by default on pretty much any Linux you'll have, but it's the one that comes with Linux usually isn't compiled with one of the options that this one needs. So you've got to go and recompile it, which is where I lost a lot of time at the beginning of the summer. But it's worth it if you want to convert some videos, because I'd love to get some old 90s movies, Terminator 2, maybe Alien on and
especially the ham 8. The results are stunning. Like it's mad. It's very, very impressive stuff.
It is, and I mean the only downside, if there is one, is the file size. But I mean, it's so easy these days now to connect, external peripherals to your Amiga that it shouldn't be an issue. I've no problem having, a 4 gigabyte SD card for one movie or something.
Because let's face it, we don't have generally don't have the horsepower for decoding very heavily compressed stuff. So that's this kind of light compression is what you want. So big file sizes, but it gets the job done. And storage is cheap these days.
Okay, let's move on to the games. Turrican 2 was updated on whdload.de for the first time since 2009. Now, some of the extra features added were controller support for multiple buttons. There was CDTV support added and some others. So you can go and have a look at that and see if any of those new features are of interest to you.
Now, Turbo Tomato, if anyone's heard of it, is a game that is being worked on by our very own John Gervin, or Nivrig. And now that has been, this is a project that he started like 20 years ago or so, and he kind of got, or maybe even more, and got, put aside for a couple of decades, and now it's been picked up again. And so John's back working on it. He's plowing lots of time into it, and you can see his daily updates or weekly updates on his blog. And now it looks like it's going to get a physical release, so there'll be a boxed copy available in early 2021. So that's exciting. Like a boxed Amiga release from one of the Amiga Ireland guys. This is great.
Yeah, that's really cool, and it's great that he's got like the Bitmap Soft are on board. And Stu Cambridge is involved, I see, with the art as well, the box art. And the game itself is just kind of frantic fun, like, you know, it's just brilliant. I'm not even going to try and describe it to people, but you have to play this game. It's just brilliant. Like, it's yeah, it's crazy.
Right, Alien Neoplasma, a great-looking horror platformer, is coming to C64. This game had been released previously on ZX Spectrum, I think 2 or 3 years ago, but it's been so good that the guys from Hokuto Force, one of the busiest, groups on the C64 game scene, decided to port it to C64. There is already a teaser trailer, or I think at least 3 or 4 on YouTube, so why not have a look? The game looks great, the game sounds great, and its playability is really great as well, because I've played it on Spectrum, so it's really good.
Oh wow, it does look good. Okay. Yeah, gonna have to get the Commodore back out.
Yeah, I think it's the high-res mode that they've been using.
The palette is just the colours, the atmosphere is so good. Wow,
it's very good.
Right, Amigo The Fox is a new game by Erock, and an alpha version is available with 6 levels for you to play. And credit to Indie Retro News actually for that one in the previous item as well. So this game is kind of a Mario clone, but Mario is replaced for a fox for I think largely legal reasons. And it looks very faithful anyway, and it's a work in progress, so it'll be interesting to see how far it goes. It looks like it plays at a nice pace. Actually, I was thinking that would be a good way to get your kids into it at the moment, because it's nice and slow. You know, it's kind of like the original Mario games. A nice, accessible game.
But yeah, it's just by Eric Hogan, he did actually start out with some ripped Super Mario World graphics. So you're thinking the SNES version of Mario, and it is the SNES version of Mario is a great game, and it's basically just like you say, the same kind of pace to it. And so, yeah, it looks good so far. It really does.
Right, so we've got Tiny Bubble. It's an almost arcade quality port of Bubble Bobble released for Amiga. There are certain upgrades like more colors, for example, I think 32 instead of 16, more FPS, so instead of 25 there is 50, and the resolution is also updated, so it's, I think, higher. So playability is still great. It's just the aspect of graphics and quality, so why not have a look? It's a really great game.
Cool. Beyond the Steel Sky has been released earlier this summer on multiple platforms, and it's been updated just recently to improve the controls. This is a sequel to Beneath a Steel Sky, which of course was a very big deal on the Amiga back in the day, and Dave Gibbons is back on board as the art director for this one, so that would be very interesting. To be honest, when I see the higher resolution graphics versions of the older games come out, part of me doesn't want to go near it, because your imagination filled in so many gaps back then that it can be I
agree.
But there you go.
It does look incredible though. Rather than a remake, it's because they've done it as a sequel rather than a remake. I think that kind of maybe gives it a bit more it's sort of a respect for the original, I suppose, rather than just trying to sort of say, well, yeah, this is the original just with better graphics. So it's I've heard good things anyway. I have yet to try it myself.
Yeah. Well, I see it's in the App Store on my phone actually, so I'm thinking of I am debating. Yeah, when we have time for life again. Scum VM 2.1.2 has been released for Amiga. It's a complete package with working themes, bug fixes, and additions of Eye of the Beholder 1 and 2, Toonstruck, and Woodruff. And hat tip to Anthony Jarvis for that one. Okay, let's move on to discoveries. FSUAE is available on Haiku OS. I was surprised to find this out earlier in the summer when I was playing around with Haiku, that their repository has FSUAE in it. Now, the current version has issues and doesn't launch properly, but there is a bug tracker there, and hopefully at some point that'll get fixed.
For GIMP users, if you know of GIMP, that's a sort of like an open source Photoshop type deal. There's an IFF ILBM plugin available, and that will let you read and write and edit Amiga format graphics, which is great for GIMP users. Obviously there's a GIMP on Linux, but it's also available on all the other platforms, including Amiga OS 4. Believe it or not. It's a big deal for Linux users especially. So if you want to do some processing of artwork for games and that's it's handy to have.
Right. So if you have a dead SID chip on your C64, there are multiple chips that you can actually use. There's a SwinSID, there's a SwinSID Nano, there are other chips, but actually, in my opinion, there are two SID-like emulators that are worth mentioning. One of them is ARMSID, the other one is FPGA SID. So we're going to be talking about ARMSID, and the price is pretty encouraging, and the emulation of SID is pretty good. I've got one myself, to be honest, and I'm surprised how well it actually plays. It's if it comes to a newer SID, 8500, it can emulate it pretty well, like I'd say like 90%, 99%, maybe even something like that. But still, I think FPGA SID is one of the best, if not the best.
And actually, the YouTube channel CRG is Glenn's channel, and he did a really good sort of step-by-step overview of the ARMSID chip. So if you want to see how it comes packaged, how to install it, and a really detailed comparison of the sound compared to the other ones, with using the same games, you did in a really good, kind of scientifically minded way. You will really know the chip well before you buy it. So we've a link to the CRG video here where you can check that out.
And I think ARMSID supports paddles and the mouse as well, in comparison to, for example, SwinSID. So you can use, with ARMSID, you still can use GOS.
Oh. Okay. I didn't realise the peripheral support is in the SID chip.
Yeah,
really?
It is. It is responsible for the mouse. SID is responsible also for the mouse and for the paddles.
It's the same story on the Amiga actually, because Paul is responsible for the analog inputs. And
it's a very similar stories with the, I think, Atari 8-bit as well.
Pokey,
Pokey is responsible for a couple of things apart from sound, as far as I remember.
Yeah, it deals with a lot of that I/O stuff, and I do remember that because I killed the one in my Atari back in the day. Fixed all running now. But
I remember you told me you fixed that as well.
Yeah, that's what happens. Okay, there's a pre-release available of a Visual Studio Code extension for dealing with Amiga code, which is pretty excellent for users of for people using cross compilers and the likes. This will let you have a more in-depth look at your program, so you can debug it, and you can profiles performance and stuff like that, and see how it does memory wise and stuff like that. So it gives you sort of memory breakdowns and things, and that's a really nice plugin to have if you're cross compiling on PC.
And I think that one came in from John Gervin, actually. Hat tip to John.
Oh yeah, there you go.
If you've got Wi-Fi on your Amiga, so I got into the Wi-Fi world thanks to Luke, actually, in Retro Ready. And when you install something like Roadshow, it saves a file with your password, encrypted password, to access the Wi-Fi network. And if you want to change passwords, maybe you want to change networks and change back, the quickest way, if you know how to do it, is to swap those files around. So to rename that file and swap it with a new one. Now what creates that file is a part of the Roadshow installation and configuration. But a way you can bypass all of that is to go to the website wireshark.org. You can get it on our website here. We've got the link. Basically, you can calculate what your WPA key is by entering your password and your SSID. So what you can do then is, for each network Wi-Fi network you need to connect to, for example, my Amiga is connected to Wi-Fi here at home, but at the venue it connects to a different Wi-Fi network. So I just create a little file with the key for each of those, and I rename them differently, so one of them will always be the current active one, and it works really nicely.
Cool.
That's really great. Great tool. Right, starringthecomputer.com is a website listing Amiga appearances in TV and film. Sledgehammer Season 1 and Get Smart, the movie, are on the list as well.
Trust me, I know what I'm doing. There's a free library of Amos PDF books available, and thanks to Stormkeeper on the Amiga Ireland IRC channel for pointing that one out. Hi Andrew, if you're listening. That's great. There is an awful lot of books here, and the whole thing complete, unadulterated, available. Okay, it's time for Ask Amiga.
Okay, and this question is from Irla, and he's asking how to generate a truly random number on in the Amiga shell. Now, when you're talking about random numbers, you could argue that there's no such thing as a truly random number when there's a computer involved. Basically, all you have is, pseudo-random numbers that are less and less predictable, and it's basically the standard. How far you want to go with that. That's kind of like determines how you get yourself a random number. One of the easiest ways, I suppose, of getting a random number on the Amiga or on a lot of the older computers is to so long as your application or your game isn't synced to the video beam or isn't synced to the video output, is to just pick one of the video output registers and just have a look at that. And that's usually kind of like a frequency counter for counting the lines of the display and that. So you can use that, and it'll give you basically a semi-random number. Now it's not random in that it maybe represents an exact position on the screen that the computer is drawing at the time, but if your application is synced to the beam, then yeah, that's going to be roughly around the same all the time. But if your application isn't, and if you're dealing with the Amiga shell, it's probably not going to be. Then it's a pretty easy source of effectively random numbers. So on the Amiga, there are a couple of counters in the CIAs, and so you'd have to look up a register map of the Amiga CIAs. But there's one that I've put together on AmigaCoding.com. And you can go in there and have a look at all the memory map of the Amiga, and in there's a memory map of the CIAs. And in there you can see the addresses. And if you look at those memory addresses, they'll give you, let's say there's one for the horizontal counter, which counts at 15 kilohertz. So every 15,000th of a second, that number is updated. So, every time you read it, it's going to be a different number, basically within the range of, it's a 16-bit number, so I think it goes to, I can't actually remember what the limits are, but it's for picking random numbers up to a few thousand, you're probably pretty safe there, so long as you're not synchronized to the screen update. There's also the 50 hertz or 60 hertz counter, which counts your frames, and and there are a couple of other things like the time of day counter and stuff like that, and they're all in the CIAs there. So they can be easily read by just reading the memory location directly. Now the CIAs are only ever read as a byte, but that's once you have your code running, you can do that. But in a shell, it makes things a little bit trickier because you don't have that kind of access directly as you would as a coder, And if anyone is the 8-bit type or even the basic types, you'll know your peek and your poke commands. But there's actually on Aminet there are peek and poke commands that run in the shell, so they kind of do the same thing. So you can do a peek, you can just download them and install it. And from the shell, you can type peek and then type in the address of the particular horizontal scan rate counter or something like that. Press enter, and that will give you basically the position of the counter at that instant in time. So you can see that you can send that to an environmental variable and then use it in your scripts if you need to, or store it in a temp file, a temporary text file, or just if you want to look at it, you just want to look at a random number, then you can do it that way as well. So that's from the shell without actually kind of writing a program specifically to do it. That's probably the simplest way. OS4 has an actual random handler that collects what's known as entropy, which is basically the sort of the semi-random things that happen, like the beam counter and like a few other things, and it puts them all together in a mash that makes a less predictable number. And so it's closer to random, and it deals with that, and that's kind of like for for anything in the OS that uses random numbers. But that has an Amiga DOS handler, and you can use that to just pump out random numbers if you want to. But it's not something that exists on OS 3 or before. But so I'd say peeking at those kind of registers is probably the simplest way to get a good enough for most purposes a random number in the shell.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Did you say you put up an article on AmigaCoding.com?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I compiled a memory map article there. So it's that there's a sort of a nice big, a bit in depth maybe, but it depends on what you're looking for. It might not have enough detail for other people, but it's basically a memory map of the Amiga, and it has each model and the different addresses and what those addresses correspond to in the different models. So a couple of them, like the CIAs and the clock ports, you could they're there as a single entry, and you can drill down, you can click on it and go into that, and that shows you the individual registers in the clock port and in the CIAs, just for a bit of extra detail. For it's handy stuff for software. If you're banging the hardware, for your for low level games or drivers or whatever you happen to be working on. But it's something like kind of like it didn't really exist in one place, so I just said, sod it, I'll do it. So there you go.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah.
Right, so for online activity, it's been a long summer. Actually, when I came back and checked online, I was expecting, I don't know, I just thought the internet would have generally just quietened down over the same period, but no, it's been really busy.
Everyone's stuck at home.
Yeah, I think that's it, yeah, whereas we were the opposite. We were completely off-grid and out of coverage half the time. So hello to all our new followers on Twitter, new group members on Facebook, new followers on Instagram, and people who've signed up for the mailing list and gotten in touch asking for information about tickets. We're going to respond to everybody as soon as we can. And of course the internet side of things and online side of things kind of tends to get busier around the time tickets go on sale, and to the end of the event and a little bit beyond as well. That's when I think it's at its busiest. There were some questions about the event, kind of how it's going to work with the coronavirus. So September is usually the time where everything, all the information, the contacts are confirmed, guests are confirmed, all that kind of thing. And usually we kind of update the website come the end of September. This time around, though, it will be the end of November, because we need to just see which parts of the restrictions are most likely to stay in place that we can kind of bet on. And for the ones that we can't bet on, how do we kind of plan for those possibly swaying one way or the other? We need to get all that information kind of out up onto the website, so that when people are buying tickets, they know exactly what they're buying for. Now, on my travels over August, I was actually in the Sheraton Hotel, and I brought an Amiga with me, and tested out kind of the gear there again, just to kind of check how can things run a bit smoother, checks their sound system, their projectors, all that. But they had a good idea for helping us stay compliant and safe, and without too much interference to the event. So things would be different, obviously, in terms of moving around and contact with each other, and shared things like joysticks. We've got to figure out how that would work if there was going to be, say, a standalone machine connected to a projector. What do we do with the joystick there? Do we leave a bag of gloves beside it, plastic gloves, and do we need someone there to ensure that they're always worn? And all that kind of stuff has to be figured out. And once it does, we'll put our tickets out on sale. And we might do a little survey before that to see how people feel about any changes that are going to be in place this year, because I'm sure even in January it'll be a different event. At the moment, things are pretty tight in Ireland in terms of people flying in. There's a green list of countries, and if you're not on that green list, you have to self-isolate for 2 weeks. So basically you can only do essentials like going to the shop, and like there's a lot of countries not on the green list. Like Britain isn't on the green list, but you can come from Northern Ireland, no problem. Actually, a couple of countries were just taken off the green list recently, so it's almost not worth mentioning at this stage. But they're looking at getting rid of that and replacing it with a EU-wide system that's going to be colour-coded, and hopefully they'll find a way to scrap the 2-week self-isolation as well. They're also looking at opening up pubs and venues again, and talking about the desire, at least, to remove the need. There's currently you have to buy a €9 meal if you want to have drinks, and they're talking about getting rid of that. They also have the desire, the governments that is, to remove the time limit in venues, so that people don't have to go within 90 minutes or whatever. Now, we have a coalition government at the moment. There's 3 parties in there, so there's sometimes a certain amount of one-upmanship with people saying things. So we have to wait and see. Things will definitely relax more and more over the weeks and months. We just need to wait and get a snapshot and then make a decision based on that. So that's where we're at.
Basically, see what happens.
We just have to wait. That's it.
Yeah. Now, we did do a recording on the remainder of the feedback, so we might insert that here. We did a survey a while back, and I think about 2 podcast episodes ago, we discussed the survey results from the multiple choice questions. And then we've got the commentary at the end where we asked people what they would like to see change the most at the event. So we'll might insert that here. So it's a slightly older clip, a couple of weeks old, I think. So we might switch over to that now.
Host hotels should offer event attendees a decent discount on a room to stay to facilitate those bringing lots of equipment.
Yeah, this year people found deals online that were better than the discount we were given by the hotel. But after talking with them now, they've given us a rate of €115 per night single, which is cheaper than last time.
Not a major deal, but seeing some more big box Amigas if possible, or pets. Going back even further, 1500s and 2000s and up would be great.
Yeah, that's the machines on display are actually down to what people bring with them. But I'm glad that's the only issue you had at the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a shame because I fly over from Glasgow, of course, but I've got 2 or 3 machines here that I'd love to bring over, but I can't, unfortunately. But the year before we did have at least one 2000 and a couple of 4000s as well. So yes, it's just down to the year in it.
Right, another one. Score table on a big screen. A dedicated anchorman, strict timetable for gaming competitions.
We are working on a notification system, but putting a real-time score updates on the screen will take time to develop, and I don't know if that'll be ready for 2021 or not, because of all the time to develop it and test it. But we are looking into it, and we'll also make it easier for people to host gaming events, and that way we can have a list of game competitions and a name of who to contact, or something like that. And we'll get to a dedicated anchorman once we grow our volunteer base a bit.
Right, another one. Might be an idea to concentrate the computers on one side area of the hall and have the other seated part for audiences listening to the talks on the podium or just socializing there. Great idea to have the workshop isolated from the main hall.
Thank you. If the stage was at one end of the room, that would work. Not sure if we will move the stage though, but there is a plan to put a few rows of chairs in front of the stage anyway. So there'll be a bit of buffering there.
And another one. A dedicated PA for demos and music. Also more time for hands-on workshop.
We had a dedicated PA which was tested in the morning and worked well. Unfortunately, there was a secondary control panel that I wasn't aware of and didn't have access to. So when sound problems arose, we were dogged by them until later Friday night. For the workshops, it was a big surprise this year how popular they were. The room was full all the time, more than we expected from the pre-event survey. So we'll space them out more next year. Maybe even start them on Friday, actually.
It was great to see Amiga Kit at the show, but would it be possible to get a couple more vendors to show up? It would also be pretty cool if a sort of market aspect could be developed into the show over time for second-hand machines and components.
Any vendor can get in touch about setting up a stall. The main requirement is that you only sell Commodore-related stuff and stay, on topic, basically. The other thing is that we can't offer exclusivity, so you may not be the only seller. If you're okay with that, and if you feel it's still worth your while, by all means, get in touch. For trade, we could definitely work something out where we have an area, a shared area where people know to go to look for stuff. If you are bringing secondhand things, don't get them mixed up with the raffle material. It's the only thing.
Yeah. Kiss it goodbye. It might be an idea actually to have a sort of a, fill in a little slip of paper and have them in a central area. So, so you don't have everyone just leaving all the secondhand stuff for sale under someone else's watch. Yeah. But we can sort that out. Out Thursday without any schedule, just games and socializing and going to the pub.
A few people are interested in that, so maybe we can find a pub. It would be unofficial, but we could find a place. More
duration, one more day would be great. Run the event for longer in the hotel on Saturday.
There was a time when the venue would clear out early on Saturday, but that has changed in the last 2 years. the main constraint is getting to the pub on Saturday night on time. They're holding it for us on Saturday, which is their busiest night, so it's quite costly for them. That said, I've been talking to them, and we're working on ways to make that happen. And one of the ways actually we're going to do that is not just be able to arrive there a little bit later, but also have a meal on Saturday in the venue that we hold the event in, and that way we won't need to leave as early to go and get food somewhere else along the way. We can eat there, continue as we are, and then when we leave, go straight to the pub at a later time.
I would suggest you try to portion the main stage event out somewhere, certainly over the whole Saturday, and preferably also the Friday, instead of concentrating it in the final hours of the event. That way, there will be space between the events, so that unforeseen issues and technical delays, which are bound to happen, are less likely to impinge on the next event, and the attendees won't get fatigued by a main stage marathon.
When we first became a 2-day event, far more people came on Saturday than Sunday, so it made sense to allow people to reconnect after a year apart before getting busy on Saturday. But I think we can spread activities across the 2 days a bit more now. Another issue is that on Saturday, people tend to turn up later than we open up, so we can't really start anything of too much substance first thing, although maybe we should reconsider that. In terms of timekeeping, we'll also review the way we do interviews and talks. Until now, whoever does an interview or a presentation, they're given a time, and if there's any guests, we prepare those. And it's worked fine for us, but unfortunately, the interview with Dave Haney, Trevor Dickinson, and David Pleasance started late and didn't run the full hour as a result. We'll be auditioning people on Friday morning to use the Amiga Ireland wheelbarrow to scoop up anybody who's late and get them to the stage pronto. The interview had to end at the scheduled time because there was so much more to get through. We had to be at the pub on time, and we were massively surprised by the number of donations for the raffle, so that was bound to take more time than expected. It was actually nothing to do with what act came before or after. It just didn't get to use its fully scheduled time. So apologies to anyone who was disappointed by the shortness of the interview. Myself and the other organisers put a lot of time and expense into it. But I've decided too that next year, if we don't have an interviewer for whatever reason, instead of waiting, if we are left waiting, I'll just give them a mic and let them start, and maybe then go and track down whoever else is missing to keep things on time. These people are well used to that anyway. They're well able to go with a microphone. Apologies too to our guests who were on standby well in advance, but didn't actually get interviewed in the end. But we're looking forward to talking with you properly next time. That said, Dave Haney was with our group for 2 days, and although I didn't get to chat with him at the event myself, Manny did, and I'm told he was very sociable and friendly and open to questions, and I hope we have Dave Haney back again with us one of the years.
Right, also consider having more games on big screen, for example, both semi-finals and finals in the various compos. Try to make the compos more of a spectator sport.
Yeah, we did have the final on the projector for Sensible Soccer, but semis are a good idea, actually. We might come up against a problem if there are too many finals happening at the same time, but that's an edge case. It's unlikely. We connected emulators in the last event, and I know not everyone's in love with that idea, but it works well to get a quick HDMI set up without fuss, so I think that's a good suggestion.
I think we'd be able to sort out some AV stuff for real hardware as well. So you don't necessarily have to be using an emulator just because the projector needs HDMI or whatever. We'll figure something out.
Yeah, true.
The things I wish were better, I think the organization of music, design and 3D contests was not that good. The music was hard to hear and not enough entries in some categories.
Yeah, I've already talked about the audio video a bit, but as far as the number of entries goes, last year we had about an hour's worth of material to present just in one category. And this year we had 3 categories, so it was important that we didn't have 3 hours worth of material to present, because you're not going to hold people's attention that long. So they were advertised in the same way, assuming there'd be a similar uptake. Now, most submissions come late, so you never know for sure until very late in the game whether you're going to have too many or too few. But next year we'll do it in a way that allows us to promote it widely and at the same time limit the amount of entries we want. And I think that's solved already, actually. As for the technical issues, everything worked perfectly in rehearsal. We use a white image to test the 3 color channels, and we tested stereo over the PA system. So it was just unfortunate that I needed a backup machine, and didn't have one due to losing a crucial volunteer that day. So next year, I suppose we'll need to have 2 backups. We were in a room full of Amigas, but unfortunately there are significant hardware differences between the models, and at the minimum we need a hard disk to run the competition. We also need 020 to run the executables, although there's probably 68,000 versions available that I can get for next time. Need AGA for the artwork and so on and so forth. So from where I was standing, I couldn't really see anything I could borrow at short enough notice, and the only solution I could think of was to pop the ROMs and see was there another machine I could put that in and boot my disk off, but not something I want to do under pressure. So next year, it'll be all done on ADF images mounted on the presentation machine. And if there's an issue, we can use GoTech on another A1200. That said, thanks to everybody who entered. The standard was really high, and we've a good base to build on next year.
Better selection of video demos playing at the main projector. The music was not clear. Some of them were not that interesting, and sometimes there was no continuous flow of it.
So I've already talked about the audio problems that were there on Friday. So that's one out of those 3 solved. The aim is to have the music loud enough to be able to hear, but still allow us to talk to each other. So that's why it's kind of at a medium level like that. But maybe it was lower and I didn't notice. As for the continuity, I'm working on a remote control for next year, because unfortunately the demo machine and the bar are on opposite sides of the hall, and that's probably the biggest issue of the whole weekend for me. As for the selection, we're limited to demos that we can play on the hardware we have and that are scriptable. So if anyone would like to host a demo show instead next year, even for half an hour or an hour, please get in touch. But we will make all those improvements for next time.
There was no plan for the main stage, and people didn't know what was going to happen and what to watch.
Well, there was a plan, but unfortunately, because of the audio-video issues I mentioned earlier, we couldn't show the schedule on the big screen. So we'll have a written or printed one this time as a backup. Also, Aris Amiga has come up with some interesting ideas to make it easier to notify people if something is to change at short notice. Aris is the son of Wakero, and we were chatting one day, and he said he was thinking of learning JavaScript, and he came back a few days later with a proof of concept for a notification system. He has other plans too, and if there's enough time, anything seems to be possible, because he's a very talented fella. So with a bit of luck, we'll see some of that in January.
There were a lot of machines left alone, some not even plugged in. Maybe it'd be a better idea to have less machines than too many with no one sitting close to them. Maybe a strict 1 machine per person would make sense.
The 2 times I noticed a lot of unattended machines was during Saturday when the workshops were on, which is fair enough, and also first thing on Saturday morning, where everyone was still in bed from the night before. This time I'm going to ask for permission on Eventbrite when people are buying their tickets to turn on their machines in the morning before they come in, because it does change the atmosphere a lot when there's a lot of switched off machines. A lot of people had put the free to play sign on their machines though as well, so they weren't going to waste unattended. Feel free to use machines that have those signs on it, the little yellow joystick signs. And now that we know the venue better, we have the projector situation sorted out too, so there'll be more on that line.
An idea for the next year would be to give the opportunity for people that create something with their Amiga to have the chance to present it. For example, in 10-15 minutes, like the one that the guy did with the Raspberry Pi. I'd like to see a presentation of a new game, or a piece of hardware, or something like the changes of the latest version of AmiBlitz 3 that was released. Things like that will make people catch up with interesting topics, discuss more, and maybe activate them. I missed the trivial contest from last year. That was fun.
This is a really good idea, actually. It can be hard to tell who has something to show or not, but I did really enjoy the talk on the render farm made from a Raspberry Pi cluster. That was really cool. That was Midwan who did that. We have a big stage now, and unlike previous years, it kind of has a presence of its own that's asking to be filled, so that's a good suggestion. As for the trivia quiz, we've run those twice. Last year we couldn't get many people to participate, and the year before we had a table quiz, which kind of had more participation, but nobody really looking for it to happen again. So More participation is a good idea, though. I think it's about finding the right way to do that. If we get contestants in advance, though, and we know for sure we can fill a segment for a certain amount of time, then there's no reason not to do it.
Trevor's online interview was interesting, but bad connection and taking too much time.
That's right. We have a faster network for presentations next year.
There should be an option to pick up our computers on Sunday, if possible. If that was the story, then it was not communicated well.
We can't get clarity on that often until the very last minute at the end of the event, so there was nothing to communicate until after the show was over. So it was kind of passed around by word of mouth at that stage. We do ask the facility every year, though, and as soon as we know, we will inform everybody.
I guess it all depends on what the hotel's doing with the room the following day and whether they have something on or not.
Yeah, exactly. And staff consideration too. Like if they only have staff that night, they might want to turn it all around. But if they have staff later tomorrow, they might be able to leave it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got 3 if it comes to general, and and here they go. Keep doing what is being done. It's great. The other one is, I can't think of any direct improvements at this time. And the last one, I think the event was great, maybe a bit stricter with schedules and more interaction with the audience. Some social after-party events would be good, maybe Amiga music, film, documentary. Just a suggestion to carry on with the theme.
That summarises the majority of the feedback very well, and thank you for the kind words, by the way. The workshop space could be used to play a documentary when there isn't a workshop, if we can get permission from the copyright holders. And other than that, the comments are generally approving of the structure, more or less of the content, maybe the occasional comment about not letting certain things get too repetitive over the years, or maybe to, schedule things a bit differently. That's all taken on board. But I would like to finish up with one of my favourite comments from here, which is I thought that the technical problems brought us all together. That is a lovely comment, and it's definitely, obviously I know not everybody sees things that way, and we've got to look after everybody from all persuasions, but that was one that resonates with me a lot. So there we go, that's the end of our 2020 feedback, and next time you hear us talking about an event, it'll be 2021.
Big thank you.
Okay, so that was that. That's the end of Amiga Ireland 2020. We're ready for 2021 now, or we're getting ready for 2021 now. Until next month, we will see you in our next podcast episode.
And music was by Virtual Dimensions and Banjo Gaioli.
Did we miss anything this month? Let us know on Twitter, Facebook, or email info@amigausers.ie.
The podcast was edited by Anthony Jarvis, and we're finishing out this month with Martin Iveson's Moody Breeze from Jaguar XJ220, which has been arranged by PTY, and this is a memory of driving in the sun. Okay, take care everybody, see you next month. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.